14 WILI and 95.3 FM presents Hometown Threads, a closer look at our community and the people that make it go. Every week, you'll hear uplifting stories from our local businesses and our neighbors. Now, here's our host for Hometown Threads, Keith C. Rice.
All right, here we go. Another edition of Hometown Threads. 14 WILI, 95.3 FM, and Willimantic Today Facebook. Keith C. Rice here, and of course, Hometown Threads comes your way every week. Big thanks to our, somewhat new sponsor still, Liberty Bank, Be Community Kind. And big thanks to J. Matt Rupar behind the board and RJ and the admin team at Willimantic Today. And thanks for all who listen and watch the show every week. Hometown Threads is a 25-minute show focusing on our neighbors, community members. We learn about them, how they get their start, how their businesses got started, what they're up to today. We try and fit all that in within 25 minutes. Uplifting, positive, inspirational stories, and maybe info you never knew about our guests. And we'll get to our special guest in just a sec. Again, Hometown Threads brought to you by Liberty Bank, Be Community Kind, with two Willimantic locations, 1703 West Main Street in Willimantic inside Gateway Commons. Make sure you say hello to my lovely wife, Marianne Gargoni, and 679 Main Street, Willimantic. Rick Nassif is our guest for episode 11 of Hometown Threads. Rick now works for Keller Williams. We'll get to that a little bit later, but we all know Rick. Of course, we know the last name. The building still stands across the street from the radio station. He launched a lot of careers. He's done so much for the community. Welcome, Rick Nassif.
I'm honored to be here. This is a joy. Thank you very much.
It's great to have you here in our WILI studios. And I was just telling Rick off the air how sometimes, it's kind of every week you got to hustle to get a guest because it's a weekly show. And sometimes I'll just be driving down Main Street reminiscing about my childhood. Nassif was a very important part of my childhood. And I look at the Nassif building and it's like, ooh, I should get a hold of Rick Nassif. Rick Nassif would be a great guest. So welcome, Rick, and tell us about the early days of Rick Nassif and growing up here in Eastern Connecticut.
Well, I was born in Manchester, Connecticut, but my parents moved to Willimantic when I was 4 years old. We lived on Hope Street, and then in 1959 moved to Prospect Street. I went to Natchog Kindergarten, Noble School, Wyndham High School, and went on to Providence College for several years after that. And I to this day, I live in Columbia, but when people ask me where I'm from, I say Willimantic. I'm very proud of this community. One of the reasons we were here is my dad fell in love with the community when he moved to the area to take over the family business.
And the family business, I'm assuming, being Nassif's, so your father is responsible for starting Nassif's, right?
No, it's my grandfather.
Whoa, it goes back even further.
Yeah, 1950.
Wow.
My grandfather, with two partners, started Nassif Arms Company on Railroad Street, right about where we're standing right now, about 50 feet from here, as a gun and pet store. Because if you needed a gun, it was to hunt, and if you hunted, you needed dog supplies. So that's our early days at 7 Railroad Street.
Wow.
And Railroad Street, where we were, had Mike's Newsstand, had Tony's package store, Tony Mamunis.
What year was this about, roundabout?
1950 is when it started.
1950, right, okay.
And then there was the Frontenac Cafe, right about where we're sitting right now. There was a music store here. I don't remember the name of it, but I remember this neighborhood well. And my dad moved to town in 1958, I believe, to close the store for the family business. My grandfather had started it.
Okay.
And we had another store in Manchester. My grandfather started that store right after World War II. He moved here to close the store. It wasn't doing that well. He fell in love with the community, and he did a lot of business from day one. Having somebody really connected to the business really energized it. And then very shortly after that, moved up to 794 Main Street, where Bev's Newsstand used to be. And from there, we moved to 766 Main Street, which is where the Flying Carpet building that's now defunct is. And then in 1977, we bought the former Woolworth building and moved there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so you started to thrive. You started to make a lot of connections around here. Your father just absolutely fell in love. And you guys, where were you guys living at the time?
We were, by 1960, we were living on Prospect Street,
you're on
across
Prospect.
from the old high school.
Okay, so Nassif stays open in 1959, and
I was 4 years
you're
old.
4 years old. Wow. So in 1959, what kind of store was Nassif's at that point?
It was a little store about twice the size of the studio that we're in now, with guns and pet supplies.
Still guns and kind of what your grandfather was doing. Right?
My grandfather wasn't really a sporting goods store. My dad moved it up the street to Main Street and turned it into a sporting goods store. And, you know, we sold athletic footwear, Converse All-Stars. That was the only thing that we sold. You know, tennis rackets were made of wood. Skis were made of wood. We sold the full range in a very tiny store that was maybe 1,500 square feet.
I was going to say, wait a minute, you said it's about the size of the studio? Oh, that's when it's before he
Once
moved
we
in.
moved
Okay,
up
yeah.
to Main Street, it was about 1,500 square feet.
So okay, bigger store. So it must have helped business because you know, it wasn't doing that great when your grandfather. But so when did it start to really take off? Post 1959.
Right about 1960,
Yeah.
and my dad built the business steadily over time. I mean, he had a wonderful way with people, and so many kids tell me about their first interaction with him. My dad had this giant set of hands that they all remember shaking his hand with their tiny hands enveloped in his hand. But he loved people, and that's what I learned that from both my mom and dad. You know, the world is about people.
Absolutely.
It's really a joy that people bring to you when they interact with you. And so many local people would say to me, gee, I went in and I saw your dad and I needed golf clubs and couldn't afford them, and I paid him off $2 a week for 15 weeks. He was very flexible. He worked and did whatever he needed to. And one little story, when I was 6 years old, he would give me a quarter and send me walking down the street to the pharmacy to buy him 3 cigars. Palma throwouts. And that was an era when a 6-year-old could buy cigars.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm
A
not.
6-year-old buying cigars.
Oh yeah, I would go down with the quarter, and they'd see me the quarter in my hand and say, "Your dad wants 3 Palma throwouts." They would hand them to me.
Were you ever tempted
And
to smoke one at 6 years old?
Not a chance. They were green. They were green. It was there were, you know, downtown Willimantic was a different place. We had 4 pharmacies. We had 6 shoe stores. We had so many different types of retail businesses.
Now we got $17 stores, and
We do. It's different. It's different. But the sense of community is still here.
Yeah,
It
it
was
is.
there then. It's here now. This is a wonderful community of caring people. I can't tell you enough about Willimantic. It's a beautiful place.
Well, you're one of the most caring people we know. Rick Nassif joining us here in episode 11 of Hometown Threads on 14 WILI, 95.3 FM, and Willimantic Today Facebook. Brought to you by Liberty Bank, Be Community Kind. So your father must have probably crossed paths with my grandfather, I'm assuming.
Oh, I remember your grandfather's silky voice on the radio all the time. It was just a delight. I thought he was a national celebrity with a voice like that. I mean,
You know, growing up, not to talk about my grandfather for a second, he, as a child, remember that guy who had the Smith Barney commercials? Mm-hmm. They earned it. I used to think my grandfather was, I can't think of the guy's name. My father's shaking his head. My father's listening to this going, no, that's his name. And Houseman or something? Anyway.
John Houseman.
John Houseman. I used to think my grandfather's John Houseman. But anyway, I'm sure my grandfather probably worked with your father. We worked, you knew him as well. And I'm sure you guys were advertising on WILI back then as well.
Absolutely. Always committed. It always produced results, and just, we're all members of the same community. We all supported each other. We did a lot for each other.
You were telling me you're very close with my father and the late Kevin Crosby, and who else was part of that little pack? You guys,
Dick Anthony from Hurley's, Ken Champagne Sr.
Great local group there.
Yeah, great local group. There was Milt King, who was a former police chief.
Sure.
He was part of that. And
you guys would all go out to
several
lunch from time to time, and
We would.
I love hearing stories about how you guys
7-hour lunch.
7-hour lunch. Oh man. I moved away for a bunch of years, but my father, I knew about the little group my father had, and he thinks the world of you guys too. And it's just sad that you were telling me a little about Kevin too. What a wonderful man who touched the community like yourself. For so many years.
I use the term glue. He was the glue. He had such a responsibility to the community. He looked at his mandate as editor of the local paper. It was his job to keep people together and do everything he could for anybody local. He's a wonderful, wonderful person.
And of course, again, we're talking about Kevin Crosby, who passed away how many years ago again?
Approximately 10 years ago.
10 years ago. Ran the Chronicle for so many years and touched many lives as well. All right, so tell us about how when it was time for your father to hand off Nassif's to you? How did that all... Take us through that and some of the ups and downs that maybe you've encountered, or you did encounter back then.
I had worked in the family business for about 9 years, full time.
When your father was still there.
My dad was still there. It was 1984, and my mom had gotten ill, and my dad decided that he wasn't going to work any longer, and I was going to take over the business. And he just said, "You're in charge now."
Wow. That's how it happened one day?
He did, and he really gave me free rein. And from that point forward, we worked hard to grow the business, and this was a very vibrant retail environment for many years in downtown Willimantic, downtowns in general. And as we moved forward from that point, about the same time, we decided to open a branch store at the Eastbrook Mall, which we did.
I was about to mention that, yes. Was it now, obviously, the big location here on Main Street, you had Eastbrook Mall. Was there another one? I thought you had another
No,
one. Just those two?
Just those two.
Okay. How many years was the one, and tell us about the Eastbrook Mall one. I know
That
it was a smaller version.
10
but-
years from 1985 to 1995.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And as it wound down, the mall itself wound down
Yeah.
in that time frame. It's had its ups and downs. We focused on the downtown store and continued to grow it. And then we, all around 1988 or so, we jumped into the team and institutional business and grew that. And that was the largest part of our business for many years. You know,
Tell
at
us a
the
little
peak,
about
we
that.
had about 70 full-time employees between screen printing plant, embroidery plant, road salespeople covering most of southern New England, the retail store.
How many employees again?
Approximately 70 at the peak.
Wow.
In different locations, and the Eastbrook Mall store.
Sure.
And then Romantic Willimantic happened.
Aha.
You have to,
I know where you're going, I think.
yeah. This
Shirts,
is a,
right?
a really good story that any mention of Nassif's for sports. And we can maybe cover the history of Nassif's, but that's something that we want to touch on.
The Romantic Willimantic shirts, right?
Correct.
All right, so tell us about this. How this had all started at Nassif's.
Yeah, not completely.
Oh, okay.
It was about 1989. We had a silkscreen printing operation in the basement as an adjunct to our team business. And Roger Adams, the director of the Chamber of
Oh, yeah,
Commerce,
I know, right.
came to me and said, "Rick, I have an idea for a T-shirt. It should say, 'Wouldn't it be romantic to be in Willimantic?' Will you print those up?" I said, "Of course." I said, and I'll print a batch for you, and maybe when you're done, we can sell them in the store. We had a really talented local artist who was working full-time as our artist in our screen printing plant, Larry Wasley. And Larry is the person who designed the Yukon Husky that is about 2 versions before the current version. Very talented, did a lot of work up at Yukon and so forth. His dad used to be the CEO of Brand Rex.
Oh, wow.
Larry was brilliant, and when we ran this by Larry, he said, "Oh no, you want this to say Romantic Willimantic."
Oh,
So the idea of that verbiage I attribute to Larry. And I had always had a vision of a railroad locomotive on an old-fashioned track going underneath the footbridge with some of the scenic features of Willimantic in the background. And I described to Larry this illustration that I hoped we could make. And he spent several days sketching down on underneath the footbridge, sketching the image that became the image for Romantic Willimantic.
so Larry came up with Romantic Willimantic. You're responsible for the scenery or the location.
scenery.
Look at that.
But
That's
the original concept came from the director of the chamber, Roger
Oh,
Adams.
Roger
at the
Adams.
time.
I know Roger too.
It
So yeah,
started with Roger.
Got to give Roger props. Yeah.
Larry came up with the brilliant permutation of that idea, and then I had the idea for the image, and
How
we
about
printed
that?
up, a batch of 50 shirts with this graphic image for the chamber, and then everything opened up. We had some reporter for United Press International had a child going to Yukon and saw, saw the T-shirts in our window when he was in downtown Willimantic,
Right, yep.
and ran an article on it. We had a half-page article in the New York Times on it. All of a sudden, we were getting mail order requests from all over the country
No.
for Romantic Willimantic
Oh.
shirts. And we ended up selling about 50,000 of them. And every time Roger would need more shirts to hand out, I would give him 50 shirts, just say thank you.
Now, obviously, this helped Nassif's too.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yeah. We sold a lot of shirts.
Again, part of my childhood, I remember seeing those in the window, and you walk into Nassif's Romantic Willimantic.
So there was a change when we moved from one point to another on Main Street, where we changed the name of the business from Nassif Arms Company, being a gun store and pet supply
Right.
place. We got rid of the guns and changed it to Nassif for Sports, and that was the name of the business for the last 40 years.
That's right. So it wasn't just NASA's, it was NASA's for Sports.
Correct.
Ah, okay. So you mentioned the two locations. How about some of the employees that you had working there, some of the relationships you had throughout the year, some of the careers you helped launch? I know a couple off the top of my head. I'm sure you can go right down the line. And I remember walking in there, like Thursday night was always the night. My father, if I had to go get new sneakers, my parents would take me down. Let's go to NASA's. NASA's the first place you think of. Mike Giblin was the big, he worked down in the ski department, right?
Love
downstairs.
Mike Giblin. Well, after he had owned Ben's Eagle Shoes in
That's
Willimantic that
right.
he bought from Normie Preg's family. And he ran that for several years. And when it came time to close it, he came in and he said, I'm going to work here. And
Is that what he said?
yeah, I didn't think I could pay him enough for somebody that everyone loved that much. And he really didn't want to get paid. He just wanted to hang out on Thursday nights. And
That's why he went Thursday nights.
Oh, yeah, Thursday nights and sometimes on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Mike's wonderful.
Oh,
just
yeah.
wonderful.
He was my cross-country coach back in the late 80s at Lyman, and I think he's living on the Cape now.
He is.
And was he fishing, or he does, I know he's in the...
He does SEAL rescues.
That's
He
what it
works
is.
for a rescue organization, very compassionate. He and his wife Kathy do rescues of marine life, and I see pictures all the time.
Yeah, you're right, very
miss
compassionate.
him.
Now, there's another guy who's in town, is Dan Pavone. He's part of the Plaques. He does, right?
He's a man with a golden voice.
Oh, let me tell you, I read over at St. Joseph's, and Dan and his wife Annette, both of them talk about singing. They got incredible voice. But Dan did, he worked for you for many years,
He's
right?
as good as it gets. Dan is a great person, and his business apparently has thrived. He took over all of our trophy business when we closed NASA's for Sports in 2007, and he opened Dan's Awards, and just utterly wonderful and reliable, honest as a person could be.
Yes, wonderful guy. Big Red Sox fan, too. Just thought I'd throw
I'm a Yankees fan.
I knew what I was about to ask you. I had a feeling. See, I haven't seen Mr. Nassif in years, Rick Nassif. I had a feeling, like, oh, if he's, he was one of a Red Sox fan, Yankee fan.
It was about 3-1 Red Sox over Yankees fans in the
In
area
Nassif?
growing up. It was really tough.
Oh, it's funny. That's how this town is, though. You know,
We were a persecuted minority.
We're right in the Mason-Dixon line. So let's talk about 2004 in the ALCS. No, I'm kidding.
I
Rick,
rooted for the Red Sox.
wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Unlike most Yankees fans, I love the Red Sox also.
What?
What's not to
Whoa.
love? They're a wonderful team. I grew up with Mickey Mantle.
No,
Well,
you're a good Yankee fan then.
Yeah.
I'm sure Wayne appreciates this because Wayne. Here's the thing too. I guess over the years you become a little more easygoing. I remember before 2004. We're not going to go down the Red Sox path, but it was painful being a Red Sox fan. But then we've been a little spoiled over the years. So.
I was so happy for them. Why would you wish badly on your friend's joy?
No, of course not. But as a Yankee fan, there'd be a little part of you going, you didn't want that curse to.
No.
Okay.
As long as they weren't playing against each other. I went to a Red Sox game with my college roommate about 6 years ago up in Boston. It was the Yankees versus the Red Sox. And he looked at me and said, "You can't wear the Yankees hat here, Fenway."
Somebody told me
He said,
that.
"You'll get hurt."
That happened to me walking into the old Yankee Stadium in early 2000s, so we're really going down a sports path here. And a buddy of mine told me, he said, "Be careful with that Red Sox hat entering the South Bronx." Yeah, we had a good time that night. But and I think Red Sox and Yankee fans, for the most part, can hopefully laugh things off and take things a little less seriously now. But we won't go into the whole Super Bowl talk with the Eagles, but Philly. I lived in Philly, so. But
Jim's Cheesesteaks on South Street.
oh, heck yeah. I feel go down. That's a whole other path.
Okay.
Yeah, cheesesteaks. That'd be another show. We have 5 more minutes left with Mr. Nassif here, episode 11, Hometown Threads. What were some of the? I mean, you guys obviously thrived for years. The building is huge across the street. What were some of the small little difficulties or speed bumps that you encountered over the years that you can recall off the top of your head, maybe?
But what we did as a business, we tried to sell a lot of value. We were in a community without the kind of high average income you might get in Fairfield County or even Hartford County. So we always focused on we could sell good equipment if it was worth what you paid for it. We didn't sell the fashion as much as the performance. And we sold a lot of ski equipment over years. I remember one year when we had a lot of snow on the ground, we sold almost 3,000 sets of cross-country skis out of there.
Back when it snowed the wintertime, actually. And
It did used to snow.
did it? Yeah, I know.
And Yukon had a ski area that with natural snow there. We go up to the rope tow up there and go ski up there.
That's
when
right.
I was in high
NASA's
school.
had a lot of ski trips too, right?
Yeah, we would price them at cost to just help people out.
Was that the most popular? I just thought of this. The most popular thing you sold was your ski business. I know you sold a lot of other stuff. What was the most popular product you walk into NASA's and it would fly off the shelves?
Footwear, athletic footwear. Yeah, that was by far and away the biggest thing. And then, as you know, one of the reasons we closed the business, as time went on and people were buying footwear over the internet, the dynamic shifted. And we would carry 10 models of very expensive soccer shoes because I played soccer in high school and that was my love. And then you could find a site with 50 models all made in Italy with Italian leather. And really going to a local specialty store wasn't necessary anymore.
And of course, all the local high schools probably came in here, and you had all the team jerseys, team color. I remember that. So I'm sure the local high school kids were with their parents were always, swinging through the doors at NASF's. How about some people besides your father and your grandfather that really helped your business throughout the years that you just want to name off the top of your head?
I have to name a couple names. We had a local hero of mine, Jerry Dunnick, worked with us for many years. He was a sports figure in Columbia, ran a youth hockey program there, and I would come into work every day and I would see Jerry working with us and go, how did I get this lucky? Jerry was one of the finest human beings I've ever met. We had another gentleman downstairs, Dave Bell, who ran our awards department before Dan did, and Dave was a retired sergeant from the Army and ran that with utter precision. I would look at Dave, he was like another father to me. I couldn't believe I got to work with people, and I have so many people. I could name 20 names that were hardworking, talented, sincere people. They understood the service ethos that we put forward and what we did in that business.
Well, you're such a kind gentleman, and you're an icon in this town, Rick Nassif. Tell us a little about what you're doing now with Keller Williams.
I'm a realtor. When we closed the business in 2007, by 2008, middle part of the year, I had taken the course that I needed and gone into real estate, and just love what I do. I'm with the agency I'm with, Keller Williams Realty. Keller Williams Legacy Partners is the local franchise. They such high ethical standards. Service to the customer is the core of it, very similar to our retail business. And I respect the people I work with. We have about 400 something agents out of 9 offices throughout most of the central part and eastern part of Connecticut.
How can people get a hold of you if you want to reach out about real estate?
Go to rick@nassif.com is my email address. 860-208-1354 is my phone number. And nassif.com will get you my contact info.
There he is, Rick Nassif. I'm so glad you're enjoying the real estate world. Any chance at a reopening Nassif's and a Nassif's comeback?
No.
Thank you so much. Rick Nassif, episode 11 here at Hometown Threads, brought to you by Liberty Bank. Be community kind. Again, 2 Willimantic locations, 1703 West Main Street, inside Gateway Commons, and right next here to the station at 679 Main Street, Willimantic. Thank you, Liberty Bank. Be community kind. Thank you, J. Matt Rupar, RJ Willimantic today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching 14 WILI, 95.3 FM, and Willimantic Today Facebook.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
And that concludes another edition of Hometown Threads. Got a story for Keith? Reach out to him on Facebook by searching Keith C. Rice or email him at krice@hallradio.net. Don't forget to tune in next week on 14 WILI and 95.3 FM, as well as the Willimantic Today page on Facebook.